Thanks to Blackboard for the lunch. Thank you, Rita. I'm here to introduce a friend of mine that I met a few years ago. Actually, it's been like maybe more than a few at Texas DLA. And Raymond Rose is a major player in the policy making of most important subject that has been involved in online learning since the mid-90s. He's currently the chair of the Public Policy Committee at TXDLA, and among others. It's a great privilege to introduce him, Mr. Raymond Rose.
Start off with a quiz. Just as a, see how many of you are familiar with these terms, and I'm going to be using some of them as we go through. I'm going to move. So, you know, just get used to it. You guys have fun following. So we'll hit those as we go along. So this is, you know, Excellence in Online Learning, the year of online education. But so when we're talking about what have for a title, it's why. I'll get to that in a little bit. Let me tell you a little bit about myself, because it fits, and I'm going to frame it within this. I used to be a K-12 educator, and then an administrator and a guidance counselor, you know, some of the K-12 stuff. And then I was working as a civil rights specialist for the Massachusetts Department of Education, where Massachusetts had a civil rights legislation in education that looked at race, sex, color, religion, and national origin. And as part of that, we did compliance monitoring. We did enforcement of state civil rights laws as well as federal civil rights legislation. So over time, when I do things, that background comes into play a lot. So when I'm talking with you about accessibility issues, I'm coming at it from a civil rights specialist perspective and from a compliance monitoring perspective. Okay? So the virtual high school was the country's first online high school, and we did that over 2 decades ago, and I was part of the team that helped to create that. So I've been doing online education for a while. And as part of that, when we're looking at online education at the high school level, I said, we have special needs students. We knew we had students with disabilities. We had a variety of different types of issues that students had. So I wrote a special ed policy for the virtual high school. So that was the first virtual school special ed policy. 2007, I wrote a publication talking about access and equity in online learning. The problem was nobody cared. It wasn't until about 2007 that the enforcement agencies finally figured out that there was this thing called online education and there were some access problems. So it's taken a while for them to move along, even though we knew from the beginning that there were some problems. Okay, and I've been in faculty at Houston-Tillotson University, technical working groups, so I've done some other things. And then a couple of years ago, I did an update of that publication about online education. Now, it was focused on K-12, but the issues for K-12 and accessibility are the same for higher education. But this is my file of access, accessibilities, complaints, and issues since 2007, and this includes a good deal of higher education. So this is, the things that I'm going to be talking with you about are based, in fact, on this stuff. Why is this the year of access and online learning? There are three basic reasons. Enforcement. The Office for Civil Rights and the U.S. Department of Justice are going around and citing colleges, universities, K-12 institutions for violations related to access in online learning. Professional development. There's a focus on professional development related to accessibility. Your team here has been through the Texas Distance Learning Online Accessibility Certificate Program. We've run that now 3 times. Every time, with the new one starting, every time we offer it, it gets filled within 24 hours of our offering. There are other organizations that are also doing it. People have finally caught on that they need to be paying attention to these issues. And then there's something called the 504 refresh, 508 refresh, sorry. 508 is legislation, and I'll get to that, but it's being, the regulations are being refreshed, and people are starting to pay attention to it. You may have heard reference to, well, we have to do things related to 508. Not really, because 508 applies to websites that are funded by the federal government. But the refresh is going to change what are required if you want to have a government contract. And anybody that wants to play with the feds has got to make changes in what they're doing. And that means it's going to benefit everybody, but there's changes there. So we'll hit some of that. So the terms that I was talking about at the beginning, or that I showed you at the beginning, A11Y, A, and if you finish accessibility, put accessibility in the middle, it's 11 letters. So you can be really cool when you're talking to your colleagues and use A11Y as the code for accessibility. Just, you know, you're in the know. And you folks are all here. You know, there are people who chose not to be here. You, in some respects, it's like talking to the choir, because you're here because you are interested in accessibility, because you're doing things. But so you got a little extra. ADA, you hear about that all the time, Americans with Disabilities Act. Basically, you know, ramps and things like that are requirements for ADA, but ADA also has requirements related to websites and making sure that websites are accessible. And it doesn't make any difference whether you know somebody has a disability or not, that website had better be accessible. By the way, it doesn't make any difference whether you have a student with a disability in an online class. Your online class needs to be accessible right now. I'll come back around on that. Section 504 of the Rehab Act, if you've taught K-12, you're familiar with that because that's where you get students with special needs. But it doesn't end at 12th grade. In fact, this institution has a legal responsibility to be in compliance with Section 504 of the Rehab Act. You need to make sure that you're providing services to students with special ed. So you've got ADA and 504 playing together. So Section 508 is part of Rehab Act, and as I said, it applies to websites that are funded by the U.S. government. So it applies to U.S. Department of Education, it applies to Housing and Urban Development, it applies to all those folks. When Rick Perry was governor, he signed a piece of legislation that says any educational institution paid for by the state, any websites that are paid for by the state have to be in compliance with 508. So not only do you have federal legislation that says things need to be in compliance, you've got state legislation. Now, nobody's doing enforcement in the state, of course. You wouldn't be surprised to find that out. But it doesn't prevent somebody from filing a lawsuit using state or federal concerns. So the 508 refresh is telling people you have to have accessibility built into any technical product that you are selling to the US government. So you will find that, and you're going to hear about something that is going to be happening here on campus with the Blackboard platform to make Blackboard more accessible later on. They're doing it out of the love of their heart, and also because they want to be able to sell things to the feds. Adobe, Word, all of those players are making changes to their product to make it easier to ensure accessibility, because 508 refresh came into, well, it was announced last month. They've got a year before they get it in play, before it starts getting enforced. Of course, I don't know how the changes in our administration are going to affect some of these things. But that's where the things stand right now. So, we have friends, or enemies, depending on how you want to perceive them. The US Department of Justice, DOJ, they do enforcement. They pick and choose who they do enforcement with. Usually, when they go in, it involves a lawsuit, and they have supporting players, most notably the National Federation for the Blind, National Federation for the Deaf. University of Pennsylvania found out they were doing bad things, and it cost them a substantial amount of money. They had to change policies. The most recent one that DOJ has been involved with is with the University of Miami, and it's a case Dudley versus Miami, with Dudley and the Department of Justice versus University of Miami. It's Miami of Ohio. They are fairly aggressive when it comes to how they tell an organization they have to behave once they have been cited. We'll get around to some of that. The US Department of Education has the Office for Civil Rights. The difference between DOJ and OCR is that OCR has a mandate to investigate every complaint that goes their way. If I were to call up OCR office today and say, hey, I want you to come down to this university that I have no dealings with, but I've got a complaint because I know their website, or I believe their website is not accessible, they would have to investigate. But because of the funding and things, OCR can investigate everything going on campus. They don't have to stop at just a website. They could do a thorough investigation. Sports, look at Title IX, just keep going and going and going. You don't want to have OCR coming in just because it's real pain. Even if you win, it's going to take hours and hours and hours and hours for people to put together all the information. So you want to avoid having that happen. WCAG 2.0AA. I'll show you a little bit more about that. But that's now the standard that OCR and Department of Justice use when they are looking at online courses, online websites. And I will reference that. I'll give you some more stuff for information about that. And then Universal Design for Learning. Some of you are familiar with Universal Design, but I'm going to talk a little bit about Universal Design for Learning. I think I missed something. Yeah, the slides. These slides are available. If if you happen to be online and you really want to get them right now, slideshare.net, Raymond Rose, they'll be available there. You can get them. And part of what I do with these slides is, yeah, I'm talking about some of the stuff, but there are also references that I put there so that if you want to do some follow-up, there are things that you can do, and there are resources after the end that are there. So back to legal enforcement since 2007. This is not all of them. This is just to give you an idea of what's been going on. And I put a couple of K-12 ones up there. I didn't put everything. Literally, you know, I told you, I've got that stack of papers. But that will give you a sense. By the way, that's only page 1. There's page 2. So, institutions, Harvard, MIT, Berkeley, have all been involved and have been found to be bad. So, would they come here and find you being bad? No, you've got a pretty good group here with Fernando's crew. Francisco. Yeah, sorry. We don't want to give Fernando credit. But there are still things going on that they haven't caught and you need to be aware of. And the big change for you is the piece that I said early on. It doesn't make any difference whether you have a student with identified disability or not, folks. Your courses need to be accessible today. This is the operational definition that OCR uses. You can see I have cited it from some of their compliance reviews. And they use the same language all the time. I mean, you know, you look at these things and they're all, half of it's boilerplate. But students with a disability are able to acquire the same information and engage in the same interactions, and within the same time frame. Not a week later, not a day later, in the same time frame as those students without disabilities. So if you need stuff captioned, don't wait. You now have a lot more captioning requests coming in. You have to have the things be accessible. Oh, jumped. In most of those reports, here are the things that I see as common. Number one issue is the lack of alternative text on all images. You're building your course, you're going along, you say, oh, here's a pretty picture, and you put it in. If you have not put an alternative text tag on that appropriately describes that image is no longer accessible to people with screen readers, you are in violation. It takes 2 minutes more to put the alt text in, at the most. Failure to do it sets your course up as not meeting legal accessibility requirements. Why would you not do it? Because nobody told you. I'm telling you to, okay? How many of you post PDFs? Okay, change that. Don't do that anymore. There are 2 ways that you can save PDFs. PDFs can be saved as a picture, or they can be saved as optical character recognition. If you're not paying attention and you don't know the difference in what I said, there is a good chance that your PDFs are saved as pictures. not accessible to somebody with a screen reader. What's a screen reader? A screen reader is a piece of software that takes and reads what's on the screen. Well, it can only read text. So if you have a PDF of a great piece of literature, I'm not saying this is a great piece of literature, but if you have a PDF of this, because you put it in the photocopier, you hit the button to make a PDF, and you got a picture, the screen reader comes along, and it says, graphic, it's no longer accessible to the student. Go ahead. What is it? Normally, that will be saved correctly. Word to PDF is normally okay. Now, here's the quick way to check. Anytime you've got a PDF, take your cursor and put it on the document and see if you can highlight a word. If you can select a word, that a screen reader can read it. If you click it on the PDF and the whole thing gets highlighted, you got a problem. Do not use that. Math people hate me. So much easier dealing with symbols if you do. Sorry. Lack of captioning. In one of the sessions, people were saying, well, if we just had somebody signing all of the videos rather than captioning, wouldn't that be okay? No, it's not. You need to have your videos captioned. Oh, YouTube has this wonderful feature, auto captioning. That's why Harvard and MIT MOOCs got cited for non-compliance, because it's very, very difficult to understand. Well, it's okay. Captioning, auto-captioning on YouTube works, and this is YouTube's official statement, 50 to 75% accurate, depending on content, depending on accent, depending on quality of the audio. If you just turn on auto captioning, and that's captioning, that is not accessible. That is not acceptable. That is in non-compliance. People get cited for that. However, having 50% of the captioning done for you is not a bad place to start. So you can take what auto captioning does and go in and do the captioning. By the way, just having a transcript for a video does not meet this law. Gee, son of a gun. But if you've got a transcript, it's so much easier to caption it. And some people recommend that if you're going to produce a video of you talking, you should have a script first. And if you have a script first, then that becomes your transcript. That becomes your captioning. And we have some people who will advocate that their videos come out much better than if they're talking about it just sort of off the cuff and haven't practiced. So, thinking about that. There's another one there. It gets to be interesting. You know, some students don't have the ability to use a mouse. They're manipulating around the screen without using a mouse. And if your video system is expecting somebody to be able to just use a mouse to turn things on, that might be a problem. One of the fun things I'll do when I'm just helping with training for accessibility is ask somebody to take and put the mouse in the drawer and manipulate in their course without using a mouse. You've got to be able to have a course that does that, or it's not accessible to some people. Data tables. There's an expectation on a screen reader that it's going to hit a data table and understand what the fields are. And if you don't structure your data table properly, you have a problem. And I'm not going to go into all the details on this. You've got people here who can take care of that and help you with those things. But if you're creating your own data tables, dropping them in, and you have not checked with Francisco's folks, do it. You know, same thing, labeled fields. But remember, this is from OCR non-compliance reports. This is what they see when they go in. So here's a cute one. 25% of males are colorblind. 25% of males are colorblind. Disability service, unless you're very unique, does not consider colorblindness to be a disability. OCR, on the other hand, does. If you are not thinking about color contrast, you have a problem. How many of you have an Android phone? A few of you. Okay. There is an app that you can get for your Android phone. Sorry, it doesn't work. They just didn't do it for the iPhones. That will allow you to look at things, and it will show you what they look like with different types of color blindness. It can also do color blindness correction. If you're colorblind, and we've got a friend who is, we did that with, and it was, wow, you know, that's what it really looks like. So, you've got to think about contrast and color. And people have this tendency to also do something like, click on the red button. Huh? No. Don't click on the green button, click on the red button. Well, no, that doesn't work. If you want to do that, click on the red triangle and click on the green circle. That can work. But you need to be thinking about students with a range of issues. So that's just the most frequently cited stuff. I mean, just about every single one of those reports has all those. How are you doing in your courses? If we hit on something that you might have a concern with? Sorry about that. This is the WCAG stuff, and I put it up there only because, as I said, this stuff is on the website. You can grab the slides and take a look at this in more detail. I'm not planning on talking a lot about it, but it gives you categories of perceivable, operable, understandable, robust that are now. This is what OCR uses when they go in. It's what Department of Justice uses when they go in and look at things. Oh, here's a fun one for you. And this was a K-12 story, but it has relevance. They went into a school system and were looking at courses. And in the report, they cited 1,200 videos that the teacher put in as resources outside the course that were not accessible. If you make links outside of your course, that does not absolve you from having links to things that are accessible. So just because it's on YouTube doesn't mean that you're clean. You make links to other resources. Some of those are probably PDFs, and they may not be accessible. Everything connected with your course has to be accessible. Okay. You all heard about universal design, right? you start off with universal design required by Americans with Disability Act to make buildings accessible. So you got ramps, you've got easy to enter doors, things like that. Okay? So this principle, I'm not going to get into that. That's, you don't need to do that. But think about the changes that have happened in your life because of universal design. How many of you have suitcases with wheels on them? If there were not ramps, would they have produced suitcases with wheels? Or would you still be carrying them through the airport? Ramps meant it's easier for people to have wheeled suitcases. It means that streets and things are easier for baby strollers, for skateboarders. But it's changed the way people can live. It's also changed the way things get designed. So it helped a whole lot of people just beyond those who were in wheelchairs or on crutches who needed assistance. When we look at universal design in terms of education, we've taken universal design for learning to apply it to the learning situation. And universal design goes beyond just thinking about making something accessible for somebody with a disability to making learning more accessible for all students. So it's not to make it easier, it's to make the learning more accessible. One of the interesting things, how many of you watch videos with captioning on? Do you need captioning because you're having problems hearing? No. Okay? You're having captioning on because it makes it easier to understand what's going on the screen. So when you produce videos, why aren't they captioned? When you show a video, why don't you turn the captioning on to start with? We discovered a project that I was doing a number of years ago was doing online teacher professional development, and we were doing it with videos. And this goes way, way back. But I had videos that were not captioned and captioned, and I was just doing demonstrations, and the folks who were looking at them said, wow, it's so much clearer to deal with that. They didn't realize they were reading the caption. So captioning doesn't get in the way. If people don't care about the caption, they don't read it. But you'll find that it is beneficial to lots of people. So finding other ways to present information, to giving students options, both in presenting the information and in having them demonstrate knowledge. Why does everybody have to demonstrate knowledge in the same way? Is it what you care about how they demonstrate it, or that they have the knowledge? By the way, universal design gets included in the Higher Education Opportunities Act. Just don't worry about reading it. So, multiple means of representation, multiple means of action, expression, multiple means of engagement. So there's a rubric. Hey, everybody's got rubric. I wanted to deal with this. I might need your help to hit the button. One of the things that I find difficult is sometimes understanding how the disability is. Go ahead, hit it. This is dyslexia simulation. Can you go full screen, please, when we get there? Connection's was a little slow earlier. Or do we have another window open somewhere that's got it, or is this it? Not responding, it says. in the corner. There it is. You wonder what dyslexia looks like for some people. By the way, there are multiple issues with dyslexia. This is only portraying one. And talk to people who have dyslexia and they say, oh, that's how it works with me. And other people who say, that has nothing to do with it. But it's hard to understand some of these things. Can you make that bigger? I don't know if it's possible. Yeah. There you go. So this is a link. And I've got the link in the slides, so don't worry about it. You can get that. So you're asking students to read online, and this is how they see the text that you've provided for them. It keeps changing, yes. But if they have a screen reader, the screen reader reads the text that's there, not what they see. I have a friend who is working on his PhD. He has never read a paper. Screen reader for every paper that he has to read. He has not disclosed to his university that he has a disability because he doesn't really have a disability as long as people who are creating the courses make the courses truly accessible. How many students do you have like that? You don't know because they haven't told you. But you may have some students who are in fact using screen readers that haven't told accessibility service, sorry. They haven't told accessibility service that they have any issues, dyslexia, because they are in fact using a screen reader. But if they get into your course and your course has got PDFs that are pictures, they need help. But they shouldn't have to have help because you shouldn't have it as a PDF that's a picture. Okay, so that's back. Other stuff. Down. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so that gives you a sense. That's where I am. My blog will have the slides up next week, but you've got the slide share. The slide share stuff is already there. How are we doing on time, sir? Right on time, yes? Cool. 5 more minutes. Fine. Q&A? Okay, we can do a Q&A if somebody's got a question. Hold on. Here we go. Here we go with the toys. Oh, and just so you know, behind this, I said there's more UDL stuff. There are some other dyslexia simulations. Blindness simulator, color blindness simulator, the WCAG information, PDF information, creating accessible tables, screen readers. Here's the Texas Administrative Code thing, just so you can see that Texas does have one. So that's all there, and I told you, that's why I put that stuff there. You got it?
Yes.
Okay.
Questions?
Question. Somebody got a question?
Who want to go first? Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yes, it's a catch box, of course, but it's a microphone. So anybody want to ask a question? I can just...
You throw it at them.
It's
Who's
a
ready to
sponge,
ask the
so
question? Who wants to
won't
try
hurt.
it?
Anyone? There you go, Dr. Aziza.
Toss. Heads up.
Heads up.
I thought it was going to be heavy. Anyway, I need to be on record. I know I'm in trouble, but by listening to your lecture or your presentation today, my request here is we have our deputy provost here, we have Francisco. We need more help because I know that I am, and I was talking to Josie, they know me at the CDL, we teach completely online. There's stuff that I say, okay, I don't care about this, okay, for the icon for picture, but a lot need to be done in my courses, and not only my courses, all our courses. So we need more people, I think. I need faculty, I can do it. I can do it. I know I am behind, but I can do it. We keep teaching.
20 more people?
The need for faculty to work with us in terms of accessibility. So that's what we call in this conference the Year of Access. So this is not going to end here. Accessibility activities will continue on, and you will hear more as we go through the conference. Yes, thank you. And you throw it.
Yeah, feel like Christmas. My question is, do you feel that we have the technology now to create accessible courses, or is there still a struggle to piecemeal this thing?
The struggle is in people's minds, not in the ability to create the courses. The place where we have a technical problem today is on webinars. Because if you're doing something live in a webinar, type, or synchronous video-based discussion, it should be accessible. There is not a tool readily available today that will automatically do speech to text quickly and rapidly. You'll notice on, you said you have captioning on. You notice on some newscasts, the captioning is really screwed up, but you see people backtracking and correcting because there's somebody live trying to keep track. There is a brand new piece of technology in the gaming world because gamers do a lot of chatting with each other. And so I monitor the accessibility folks in the gaming world. And there's some new tools to allow speech to text for people in the gaming world. That will eventually end up in places like Blackboard to enable live chat in an easy way. I do a conference with some folks every summer, and I usually have somebody doing live captioning as well as somebody doing live signing simultaneously. And this is a group that is committed to doing that. Now, the workaround for the time being is ask the participants if they need support. If you ask, though, then you have to be prepared to do something. But if you ask and nobody says they need support, you still might get cited up eventually, but you're in a much better position.
Right, but the idea is that the universal design concept is that it's already there. Nobody should have to ask you.
Well,
Right.
but if you made it so it was fully accessible, you wouldn't have that problem. But if you don't have it today, then asking to make sure that people can get access to it is the workaround that will help you.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to catch the little box? Way over there. Can you get it to him? Yeah! Both on the throw and on the catch.
Can we try it again so I can do one hand? So I want to make a couple questions or comments. First, when you talk about universal design, the templates and stuff that they give us, isn't that on the first step toward doing that when you go into Blackboard? Is that correct?
I don't know what they...
Right. But then even when I started creating it online, you gave me like the forms or the templates to start working on. That's universal. At least I was thinking it like that. Is that correct?
It's moving in that direction. Clearly moving in that direction.
It does touch upon it because when the templates were created, they did have quality matters and universal design in mind when they were created. Now it's not 100%, but it's working towards that.
I haven't seen anything that's 100% universal
Yeah,
design.
I haven't seen it,
But moving in that direction is going to help all your students.
Right. So, I mean, but you got to think about all the courses across. Every course that everybody teaches, they're not universal. They're never going to be. They're different content. They're different things like that all
Oh, you
the
can
time.
still do it in different content.
Right. So the second thing is, I don't think that comment earlier about needing more help is accurate. I don't like to ask for help, actually, but every time I do, because I don't know how to do something, I ask my guys, I call Robert, and if he's not there, somebody else, and they all step up. I get phone calls back. They help me a lot with things, like putting groups together and stuff like that. So to say that they're, you know, and now you're even doing the 24-hour thing, right? So I haven't used that yet, but
Thank
hopefully
you.
I never will. So, but it's nice to know that it's there. So I think you guys should basically have beds and just sleep there.
No, he needs more staff. Anybody else?
Somebody way over there, I really want to throw them. I'm not going to do that. My tendency is try to throw it to knock someone down.
I appreciate you not knocking me down. I link out to a lot of YouTube videos for the courses that I teach, and I wanted to know, is there a way for me to add captioning to those videos? Because some of them are like dissection techniques and things that are really well done.
Do you have Camtasia? Do you have the tools to go to do it? Okay, so they can. If you do not own, okay, and back there, we got multiple responses here. The short answer is, if you do not own the video,
Right.
you cannot go in and just caption the video itself. But there are tools around that will allow you to take a video and get an overlay of caption.
So that when they open it in my course, they have the caption.
They would have the caption.
Okay.
And they can tell you, they can help you. They have the power.
Yeah, and the voice capture thing, I can tell you may work really well for other people, but my voice is so high-pitched, and this is my natural voice, I apologize if anybody's ears are bleeding. Even Siri doesn't care what I say. It's like,
You need
no
to
voice.
practice speaking lower.
And I have to, when I'm talking to my car, I have to be like, call Terry. So,
You have a
yeah.
music program here? Anybody else? Can you get it to the back? Oh. Not willing to toss it. There we go. Yeah.
Okay, I really start worry about one thing. I have to spend a lot of times to make my teaching materials. All these PDF files, from the other softwares, and including my lecture videos. Now, it looks like it requires me to do more work.
Yep, definitely.
Frankly, I hate it. I don't have more time to do any more extra work to provide this online course material. I want to spend my time focusing on making more effective way teaching my material to students. So, is there any way that school, the university, provide, I think many people guessed that one already, but not from the instructor, but whenever we make this material, then they just hire maybe graduate students from the same the subjects, whatever, so they know what the instructor is talking about. So whenever we have images over there, I think it's easy to put all this text for that. All the captions, they could hear it. Using all these softwares, they could make this caption very easy way. So I'm not saying we shouldn't do anything at all, but I really wish they don't ask our instructor, our faculty, to do that types of work. I think it's really too much work for us.
2 comments.
Okay.
1, making things accessible will make it easier for the students to understand and learn. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2, it is always easier to create a course and make it accessible from the beginning than it is to retrofit. And so understanding the issues, you can make things more accessible as you're building a course. Going backwards is major, major pain, expense, time. So the recommendation is to develop a process so that the new courses are accessible, that you're addressing the accessibility in the new courses rather than going backwards and trying to make those things accessible, because some of that stuff is just impossible to do. Now, other colleges and universities, both in state and elsewhere, are in fact using grad students to help them build courses. And you can run, I don't know what your structure is here for doing that, but doing the training of the grad students so they have a better understanding of what good course design is. Because the starting point, and you all here know this, building an online course is not taking your PowerPoint and just putting it in Blackboard. There's a different pedagogy there. So you have to have, if you're having grad students do it, they have to understand that too. But then they can help, and there are places that are doing that. So it's not something that's out of the question. It may be out of the question here today, but maybe it's not out of the question here tomorrow. Yeah.
Is there a specific format for the picture text that you were discussing before? If you have a photograph, a picture, you need to have text alternative?
Whatever platform you're using, when I put that image in PowerPoint, PowerPoint asked me if I wanted to have alternative text. When you're putting something in Blackboard, it's going to ask you if you want to have alternative text. The problem is if you ignore that, then when the screen reader comes along, it's going to say image. You can, in fact, make a piece of an image invisible. So if you're using eye candy, some people use eye candy. I don't recommend it, but eye candy is putting in pretty little pictures just to make the screen look pretty. You can make those invisible with alt text, but I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I want you to not have the eye candy. I wonder if I get feedback. No. Okay. I think we shouldn't subject these people to more of this. We should move on.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Raymond. So at this time, I would like to, don't sit down. I would like to recognize you with a nice award also.